Happy Sunday, happy Mother's Day out there to everybody and their mothers. Today I want to talk about fitness for beginners. We're getting a lot of questions in that regards in terms of how to start, how to make sure you can overcome injuries, and really the biggest question is where to begin. And the biggest thing we want to do first is just mobility, because if I can't extend my arm overhead and I start to add weight to an exercise pattern where I can go like this, I'm putting a lot of torque and tension on my shoulder and rotator cuff. Same thing goes for any other exercise. If I can't really bend my knees or bend my hips, and I go to do like a step up or a lunge or a squat or even ride a bike, I can add injury or add pain, and they can lead to an injury. So, the number one predictor of injury is going to be previous injury, and the number two predictor is going to be imbalance, muscle imbalance. So, with that being said, you want to kind of think about some starting beginner exercises and then learn where your weaknesses are so that you can offset that. When it comes to big body exercises, we need to be able to flex our knees. We need to be able to flex and extend our hip without pain. We need to be able to have my shoulders at my side, elbows at my side, and extend overhead with full extension. These are just the basic range of motion patterns that we need before we add strength or tension into that movement pattern to get better and force adaptations. Now, we've gone over warm-ups plenty of times, so I'm going to advance it from the ground, from moving from the ground. There's plenty of different activation exercises. You can look at the other videos on my channel. We have things from glute bridges to dead bugs to side plank breathing, half kneeling glute pulses, all these different ways to prime the body. But we don't really ever talk about kind of getting out of pain, right? Um, Now, some of the simple ways to, oh, I don't have a foam roller out here, but usually I have a foam roller, and then you have other devices that can help with soft tissue work, right? Because the first thing is just proving that you can get a range of motion, and I like using like a wall or something stable to post up against, not only for your shoulders, you can also do it with your squat mobility, using it for assistance as you let your butt go down to your heel and extend up again, letting your knees flex, letting your hips flex, letting your ankles flex. But then there's things that like soft tissue work, where when we don't have the range of motion that we need, it's usually something broken down in our chain. Now we can have lingering tightness from scar tissue from previous injury or previous use. We can also have tightness because a muscle is weak. And what I mean by that is that your whole body is one big pulley system. So in order for my bicep to contract, my tricep has to relax, and vice versa. In order for my tricep to contract, my bicep has to relax. Now, sometimes when we're doing bigger body movement patterns, things can compensate and we can feel tightness in an area, and it's actually because that muscle isn't able to deal with the tension of being pulled from whatever direction it's being pulled from to be used, and that can cause the tightness. So things like a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, or this is called a rumble roller. It's a little bit more advanced, but it really gets into those pain spots. And then they have a lot of these massage guns these days. This is like $10. Foam rollers like $10, $15, just a piece of foam. And this one's probably like closer to 100, upwards of 250. It just depends on how intense your pain is, and then um, to the severity that you need to address it, right? Because I'll go into a lifting day and I'll have a little bit of pain in my knee or just a little kind of maybe something that is lingering that I don't want to be there. But as long as I activate properly and get everything on that I want to turn on, I won't feel pain during the lift or even the next day. It's just sometimes we get stuck in movement pattern or get stuck in a position for too long, and then we can feel that tightness or impingement. So, for example, like I sleep on my right side a lot. I often wake up with a little pain in my shoulder because it's so contracted and restricted. But once I get it opened up and get my scapula activated and my back turned on, I won't feel pain when I exercise. So uh, I think the first thing is to identify the pain, the limitation, and start to work through the tissue. You don't have to, if you, I think the classic line here is if you go to the barber shop, you're going to get your hair cut. I think so many people's first thought, rather than consulting with like a physical therapist, say, or a trainer, would be to go right to a surgeon and talk to them about their shoulder, their knee, or their hip. And, you know, it just typically, if you go to a surgeon, they're going to talk about surgery. But I think I'm a firm believer that you avoid getting put under the knife at all costs. I've seen a lot of people come to me and think that they had to get rotator cuff surgery, and it's because they're in this upper cross position. So it's obviously creating a lot of tightness and impingement, and they need to get to here before they do any pressing, so that they're not feeling pain and actually working the bigger body muscles. If we're out of position, that's when we're going to put a lot of torque in bad areas that we don't want and on the smaller muscles and possibly risk injury or continue that chronic pain. But if we can get into a good position, a good posture first, odds are I can get that range of motion without any pain. But again, it's so complicated because there's a big pulley system. So sometimes you might feel pain here, and actually your tightness is on the contralateral side. So front right, tightness is in back left. Or front right, tightness is in down right, right? Like pulling me down. So there's lots of different ways you have to kind of go down this rabbit hole and follow the pain, so to speak, as you're breaking up tissue. If you notice, say, you're breaking up your bicep and you notice, oh, I can notice tightness around my elbow or around my wrist or in my collar, in my trap. Like you're kind of following this like kind of loose strings until you can remove the pain from the system and get it to work properly. So first thing though, with let's talk about knees first. I think the first thing with a knee is just proving again that you can get your calf to your thigh. You can do that without any pain. Odds are you should be able to squat, step up, lunge without knee pain. Now, if you're already feeling pain, then maybe you need to get on the ground so that you're not weight bearing, and then you're trying a nice passive range of motion exercise. And you're just pulling your leg in and extending it out. But if you are feeling pain here, then you're going to want to slowly try to get to that flexion point where you start to feel pain and then follow it. Odds are the pain is above the kneecap, maybe it's on the inside in your VMO, like right here. This is typically where you see tightness, but you can have a lot of tightness up above the kneecap itself. You can also have a lot of tightness down your perennials, down the side of your leg, um, and in your gastroc and in your calf, kind of that inside part along the bone, the meaty, chunky part behind the knee, and both of those can cause pain in the knee. Now, when you can break up that tension almost in like an active release position because you're trying to get further and further flexion, breaking up that tissue until the pain goes away, and you keep going until the pain goes away, keep going until you have that end range. The next piece is going to be so you take range of motion, tissue, then activation. So the next piece would be, okay, my quad muscle wraps over my kneecap. So if I have more tension in my quad than my hamstring and glute, I'm going to always experience knee pain. So the next piece, range of motion, tissue, then activation, hamstrings and glutes. You can do something as simple as putting a towel on the ground, maybe 1 foot flat, and curling your hamstring in and slowly going down. And this will help you activate that hamstring so that now you have two muscles working together for the leg rather than just that quad and causing more pain at the knee. So that's the knee. We'll talk a little bit about the tissue and the shoulder and the hip here in a second, but I wanted to give the first promo code for 100 entries in the Peloton contest is going to be DOGS, DOGS. And if you go to the description in these videos, you'll see the link to the contest page for the Peloton giveaway. And in that, you'll see at the bottom where you enter bonus entry code. So first entry is DOGS, DOGS, for 100 points. We got 4 more where those are coming from. Let's address hip and lower back pain. Now, typically, people experience it either across like the whole center or one side versus the other. And this is associated with our piriformis. These are small muscles that attach to our glutes, our hamstrings, muscles that innervate into our lower back. And when they're tight, they can kind of restrict all the muscle fibers in that area, and it can prevent our glutes from being in the proper position, proper pelvic floor engagement, and then we notice extension. I don't know if you saw that, but a little hyperextension of the lower back and compression of the lower back erectors and other muscles that are deeper, like the QL, quadratus lumbar. So breaking these up first is a really good idea with a foam roller, just laying on them. And if you're someone who doesn't have a foam roller, even just trying to stretch. Again, first thing is range of motion. I would say in my 10 years of training, though, 9 times out of 10, these muscles are really tight. So getting on a foam roller right away isn't going to be a bad thing. You're just going to probably notice how tight they were because of how weak they were. And this is where exercise comes into play, where you're wrapping a band around your legs and you're doing these side steps. And what this helps do is turn on and activate that glute med so that the piriformis isn't doing that muscle's job. And now you have better glute control, which helps keep your hips in place, which helps keep your abdominal cylinder doing its job, versus being out of position and all the work of stabilizing your spine, especially your lumbar specifically, is coming from your lower back and the muscles associated there. So range of motion here is going to be kind of your hinge pattern, right? Being able to extend through your hips as you're moving through that range of motion. And then another one is going to be your squat. Excuse me, flexing the deadlift. Squat is more of extension, keeping your hips in extension at this full depth so that your glutes and hamstrings are under tension. If they're not, if they tuck underneath you, you're going to feel that lower back doing too much. So range of motion is going to be touching your toes. Well, yeah, we'll just shorten it up and make it easy. Touching your toes and squatting down, sitting in the chair. That's your range of motion for your hips and lower back. If you're having trouble with those, you're going to work the soft tissue around the piriformis and the hip flexors. Those are usually the tight areas that are not allowing the larger muscles to do the bulk of the work. And then activation here is going to be those lateral band walks, monster walks, things like a single leg step down where you're on an elevated surface and you're just kicking that front leg down, tapping the ground with your heel. You'll feel your hamstring glute working as that knee is coming forward a little bit. And then the last one we'll do is the shoulder. So shoulder range of motion is going to be, we'll go down and up. And then I even want to do like a nice big circle back, forward, or back, then forward. So these are your range of motions for your shoulder. You also have things like lateral abduction. So the common tension places here are the front delts and rotator cuff that lead into the chest and then trap and neck. So First thing you can do, this door frame stretch is a really good way to release that pec minor. Make sure that elbow is above your chest to really open up that pec minor, get that to release, which is going to pull directly on that shoulder rotator cuff insertion point. Another one's your bicep. Just sticking your hand flat with your fingers down and have your wrist in line with your elbow and your shoulder. This can help release that bicep. And tissue here, before you're able to maybe afford like or invest in a massage gun or lacrosse ball, it's totally fine to just massage this out yourself. I mean, this is some of the best ways I got rid of pain when I was lifting, because you don't have all the resources at your fingertips to make it easy on yourself. So you just really have to do no pain, no gain when it comes to tissue work. You're trying to release the kind of the toxins that are stuck in the muscle, any scar tissue that builds up. And then again, you're really trying to stimulate the brain. You're trying to over stimulate this area to get the brain to release and shut off the area. And you have to be able to breathe through this stuff. I see so many people who do soft tissue work or range of motion stuff, and they're fighting to get there and they're holding their breath. But if you can't breathe when doing something, your body doesn't think it can relax or maintain that position. So it's going to be more anaerobic, and thus your body's not going to be able to hold that position. The whole key is there's no bad position except for the one you can't get out of. So as long as you can breathe and get into these ranges of motion or breathe when you stretch, then you're going to be fine to basically improve your mobility in the future rather than just make it this new routine of like, oh my gosh, I have so much I have to do already in my day and I have to add 15 minutes of mobility. No, the idea is that you're adding 15 minutes a day to get to the point where you don't have to do this so with such an investment of your time. Uh, when it comes to activation on this side, it becomes more about your obliques because what's happened when people have bad shoulders is their scapulas don't sit on their rib cage properly. And then I'm trying to use my mobility, but I'm out of position. I feel an impingement already versus scapulas attached to my rib cage. And I can go this range of motion without any pain because proper position again, proper position leading to proper range of motion. Um, so the best activation here, let's see. I'm trying to give you guys stuff, fitness for beginners with really minimal equipment. So we can activate our hamstrings just on the ground with a towel, curling it in. So I'll run through this again one more time. Activate our hamstrings to help overcome knee pain, just like this. Simulate hamstring exercise. And then we can even make it easier and put like something really light in the back of your knee and you're in this hands and knees position and you're doing a hydrant. That's going to help activation for better stabilization of your hips so you get out of hip and lower back pain. And then for the shoulders, I would start with this one. Push the wall away and then come into the wall. It's like a scap push up, put on the wall. So you start with as much extension as you can with your hips parallel to the wall and shoulders parallel to the wall. And then you push your chest towards your hand and feel that scapula or shoulder blade go back and down. So you're thinking about sliding that shoulder blade down into your back pockets is the best way to think of it. Push the wall away and come in. Push the wall away and come in. That's a really good one. Another really good one is having your knees in front of your hips, having your elbow under your shoulder, coming up onto your knee, and then reach your arm underneath your armpit, and then reach out to the ceiling. So from here, I can feel my glutes, which is helping me feel my oblique, which is helping me feel my scapula attached to my rib cage, which is super important again because we're trying to connect everything together to have a strong foundation so that I can move properly. So next 100 entry code is going to be outdoors with an S, OUTDOORS. And just to recap, we went through knee, hip, shoulder pain, And we talked about the importance of range of motion first, break up the tissue second, activate the proper way to perform that movement pattern to get out of pain third. So again, you're always doing this pattern of correct my movements first, address my tissue second, and then turn things on the way they should be. And now you're going to come back and have to do that every time you exercise, and you only have to exercise this way like 3 times a week to really train better instincts. That's the idea. We're trying to get our body to take hold of what we're trying to teach it so that we get out of the struggle of it. You can think about teaching your kids how to brush their teeth. You're not coming in and you're brushing their teeth for them every single day. That would be extremely time consuming for their whole life, and they would never be learn to be independent. It's kind of the same thing with your joints. You're trying to teach them to work properly, teach your body to work properly, so you don't always have to babysit them, and you can actually work out, live your best life without being in constant pain all the time. So moving forward, I want to talk about just some beginner exercises. A really good exercise list to start with. First is just an assisted squat. And probably face it first. Anything that's stable that you hold on to, and just move through the range of motion. Feel those hamstrings working, feel your glutes working. The whole purpose of breaking up the tissue was that everything flows perfectly. Our body's one big pulley system. So the whole purpose of me trying to break things up and make things move properly is so that I can do these larger movements and everything's going to go where it needs to go. So you have to think from this position, we're trying to get everything to collapse together. So if I'm holding this for stability, I want to start, I'm going to push my knees forward. I want to engage my pelvic floor, so think about pulling a nail out of the wall with your butt cheeks. And then you're going to slowly come down, get as low as you can, pause for a second, and then exhale as you squeeze your glutes and stand up. And you can go again, take a breath in, hold, down, to the bottom, exhale, come up. The reason the hold is so important and the breath is so important is because air is going to allow for pressurization in my abdomen, which is going to allow for my abdominal cylinder here, from rib cage to hips and all around, obliques, lower back, and front, to stay engaged so that I can literally suspend my joints in space as these muscles collapse and take the tension. So something's not working right if this tension is felt in your joints. And you may have to add more assistance. You may need to start with a shorter range of motion. Okay? But the key is to move without pain. Otherwise, you're just going to keep watering the same flowers over and over again. You're going to water the weeds and not the flowers. If you keep creating pain in your exercise, you're going to keep creating pain when you're not exercising. For a point of reference, I can throw 230 pounds over my head. I can squat with over 350 pounds. I can pick up over 400 pounds off the ground. But if I'm not feeling well that day, or I feel pain in a certain position that I need to use for that exercise that day, I will back off. I would rather lift more days in my life than risk an injury and not be able to lift properly anymore. So you have to always keep that in mind, that the first priority is mobility every single day, no matter what. It's always about mobility and making sure that you're moving well the best you can, and back off on tension, back off on weight, back off on exercises if you are noticing something flare up, because you don't want to lead to a more permanent injury. Now, the key here is also getting good at gauging when it's time to push yourself and when it's time to back off, because that can be very individual based, just based upon what your health status is, what your goals look like, and what your success or lack thereof has looked like in the past. If you're someone who's always very, steering to the side of avoidance and you keep putting off workouts, well, then maybe you need to try something new. Think of the quote, you won't open new doors with old keys. So next one, is just a wall push-up, very easy to perform. And you can do it as vertical as you need to start, so that you're moving and feeling your chest, feeling your arms, feeling your core and glutes, keeping your whole body straight, and then just start moving back. And remember, technique. With technique will come progress. All you have to do is invest some time into this stuff. An hour, hour and a half once a week, or 3 different sessions of 30 to 40 minutes. It just depends on what's realistic for your schedule, but also how badly do you want this stuff. And you're kind of. I've seen a lot of questions about goals too, and I think it's funny because um, you don't need this like all-encompassing motivation to drive you to want to be your best self and in the best shape and look like a fit cover of a fitness magazine. Literally, my goal started with, well, I want to be able to eat food and watch Netflix shows or watch a movie and not feel guilty about it. So I started working out even harder. Then I started cleaning up my diet Monday through Friday. And long story short, I'm just trying to say that it can start as something as simple as that. Like I want to feel guilt free when I lounge around all day on a weekend. Um, Another one here, if you can do it with a door frame, is an assisted row. But sometimes you have to turn your hands like this if you're in the door frame. So kind of the same thing. You can start as vertical as you need to. Just work on good movement pattern here. Don't feel any pain anywhere. If you do, address it. And then you can go back further and further. I've also seen people do things where they just pick up things in the house, like a stool or like a bag of kitty litter or a bag of rice or a bag of dog food. You can row things like that. On the ground is where I'd probably start with like a glute bridge, excuse me. And I start with a glute bridge hold. So maybe you do squats and you superset it with a glute bridge hold, just really focusing on strong glutes. Maybe you do the wall push up and you superset that with a modified side plank hold, where again knees are in front of your hips, elbows underneath your shoulder, and you're engaging your glutes so you can make sure you feel that oblique. Um, and then maybe you're doing the rows with the regular plank. Since you have to focus on your scapulas with the rows, a plank is also one where you're focusing on your shoulder blades, your rib cage, so that you're having a nice strong abdominal cylinder, versus this position where you're actually kind of cheating and putting a lot of tension on your shoulders and traps and arms and avoiding strengthening your core. So um, another entry code is hike one, HIKE, and then the number one. And that's about it that's all I had prepared for fitness for beginners. So we talked about getting out of pain, getting unstuck. Movement patterns are the most important thing to address when it comes to exercise, so that you're not feeling pain in your knees and your hips or your shoulders. And then a list of beginning exercises to prioritize are going to be assisted squats, and you can progress that up all the way to a goblet squat where you hold weight in front of your chest. A wall push-up, you can progress that all the way up to being in a flat push-up, maybe weights on your back, maybe doing push-up holds at the bottom. Assisted row, all the way to even you can do like an inverted row underneath something where you have a bar set up, and maybe you're in the gym now and you have a bar set up and you're underneath it, doing an inverted row or TRX row. And then glute bridge holds, you can progress that up to like using a bench to do a hip bridge. And then modified side plank and regular plank, I think, are the best two exercises for beginners starting out with no equipment, just working out at home. Then with pain, when we're talking about the knee, the hip, the shoulder specifically, but in general too, with any other area, it's about range of motion, then it's about breaking up the tissue, and then it's about activating the muscles that need to be activated so that you can be in a proper position. Remember, you're always trying to um, water what you're trying to correct. Okay, so don't water the movement pattern that's causing you pain. Water the movement pattern that gets you out of pain. And then I'm going to give you another promo code here. Weight2, WEIGHT, and then the number 2. And I'm just going to wrap up here with a little bit of bigger picture stuff. In the beginning, we have all this energy, we have all this drive. We can't always perform everything. And I think we focus a lot on the exercise side, but really what's going to bring you better results quicker is if you focus on the nutrition first, especially if your goal is weight loss, especially if your goal is longevity or getting out of pain. I mean, there's a lot of evidence around dairy, lectins, glutens, soy, things that are highly inflammatory can actually cause joint pain and lead to furthering chronic joint pain. Things like having leaky gut can allow intruders through the system, and they can attach and bind to our joints, um, and it can be harder for our body to clean that out. As well as if you are someone who doesn't have the best digestive system, you don't have the best mobility, it's going to be probably harder for your body to have circulation. And if you're not exercising, you're not getting the benefits of capillarization, which is the more that I use a muscle and send blood to an area, the more that my body learns how to get more blood to that area. So you can think of like a river creating little tributaries off into your body so that you can get better at supplying nutrients and removing waste. So there's lots of different reasons why you're not going to just get to your perfect movement pattern right away. And it is about just a little bit at a time. You think of the process of pushing a rock up a hill. If you try to do it all at once, you're going to exhaust yourself. You're going to burn out, and that rock's going to keep rolling down until you're able to push it up again. But if you just push that rock up that hill a little bit every day, it's about the consistency that matters. That'll lead you to that compound effect and actually gain the results you're looking for. The body's a pretty amazing tool, and as long as you keep trying to teach it something and reprogram it, it will take hold. It will try to impress you. It's the same reason why we sit so often. We get stuck in that position. We sit at the dinner table, we sit when we drive, we sit when we're at work, we sit when we're on the couch or on the weekends, and then we're in this position. And then when we go to stand up, we're still stuck in this position. And then eventually you see a lot of old people who get stuck like this because they never got out of that pattern. And that's why there's no bad movement pattern or no bad position except for the one you can't get out of. And that's why we add exercise into our routine of just 90 minutes a week so that we can improve our quality of life, get to participate in things with our kids, our grandkids, and everything that the golden years have to offer, and get more of those golden years. That's kind of the key. Improve the quality and quantity of our life if we just simply add in a simple little routine of it's kind of like having a self-cleaning oven, right? You're trying to be that for your body because exercise is going to help with autophagy and help clean out different parts of cells in our body that are wasted, that are just going to basically there's not enough room in here. So we need a routine of like spring cleaning. We don't want to let our body be hoarders. We've got to spring clean, get this thing mobile, so it's working for us and not against us. But last thing is just sleep as well. Sleep and nutrition are going to be probably the first two places to look if you're looking at weight loss and longevity and getting out of pain, and then go ahead and address the movement side. So if you're looking at the priorities, it would be sleep, then diet, and then exercise. Okay. Last promo code is SWIM4, SWIM4. Thank you for watching. Happy Mother's Day, and we'll catch you next time. This was Matt Gluckman with Think Fitness Life. We have our Peloton contest going. Link is in our comments. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more contests and more ways to earn entries.